video is going to be a little bit different. It's not a sample library, although I feel that this technology is extremely relevant. We've got some news recently that Ilio, the distributor, has partnered with Audio Modeling to distribute their SWAM line of emulation instruments. Now, if you're not familiar with these and you don't know what the emulation instruments are, I'll let Stefano Lucato of Audio Modeling explain all about it.
We use an hybrid technology. Is a technology that uses multi-vector sample morphing with a combination with a physical modeling, and that this allows to shape and control the sound like a real instrument. You not forgot the
A minor, La minore.
Listening to the performances of these instruments in real time, not only did they look like they were having fun, but it sounds like the technology is amazing. Even though it wasn't a sample library, we felt it was really relevant to get a copy over to contributor Pete Checkley to do a deep dive into the All-In bundle by Audio Modeling.
Hey there, it's Pete Checkley for Sample Library Review, and today I'm checking out the SWAM All-In bundle from Audio Modeling. The SWAM All-In bundle comprises of 32 solo instruments split into 3 categories: strings, woodwind and brass. Now this collection is really exciting because it uses Midi polyphonic expression, or MPE, and supports a variety of different controllers ranging from Midi controllers to breath controllers and 5D controllers such as a Rolly C-board. The SWAM engine is completely revolutionary in that it doesn't use samples at all. It uses physical, acoustical and behavioural modelling, which means we can control various different MIDI parameters at the same time. This means we don't have to program the MIDI in, we can have a very expressive and performance-based live instrument. I'm really interested to see how expressive these instruments are, how playable they are, and how they compare to more traditional instruments with a large sample pool. I think the idea is very revolutionary. SWAM All-In bundle occupies 730 megabytes once installed. It doesn't use samples at all. There are 32 solo instruments split into 3 categories: strings, woodwind and brass. The instruments run in the Audio Modeling SWAM engines using physical, acoustical and behavioural modelling. They are compatible with Midi polyphonic expression controllers that can be used with a traditional Midi controller too. The price is $2,150, but at the moment they're on special offer for $1,400. Jumping straight in, I've loaded up the solo cello instrument and I've set it to be operated by my traditional MIDI keyboard controller. Okay, so there's a very short example. Now, the interesting thing about using the keyboard controller, I'm using the mod wheel to control the vibrato. Okay, and you can see with the green dot, the instrument's sort of quivering when the vibrato is applied. Okay, I'm using my foot with an expression pedal to control the level of expression. And you can see in the centre of the instrument that's going up and down. And then you can hear that wonderful portamento effect, which is actually controlled by velocity. So if I play very lightly, you get a very long, exaggerated portamento. If I play with more velocity, it's a lot shorter. So when you add all of those together, you can have a very expressive, playable instrument. Now, you can hear sometimes there are quite a few mistakes and I'm probably not getting the exact effects that I'm looking for. Now, I've been practicing and working with these instruments using a Rolly keyboard. So while on the MIDI controller, it's certainly very playable, very expressive, I think you're going to get the best out of these instruments using an MPE controller. So to change instruments, it's incredibly straightforward. You click on the reset button and then you choose the type of controller you want to use. So you can see it's compatible with a default MIDI keyboard, default wind controller, a breath controller, a C-board, or a Linstrument, which if you've not seen those, they're very, very cool. Now I'm going to use a C-board. I have a 49 key Rolly keyboard, which I'm using, so I can be a lot more expressive and move up and down the octaves. Now I did try this with a 25 key keyboard and yeah, it still worked really, really well. You just need to shift the octaves depending where you're playing. So that's loaded and now I can play using the Rolly. So already you can hear how expressive the instrument is. Now I have the MPE controller enabled. We're going to look at the 3 different play modes. All the strings have these 3 play modes. The first one we're going to look at is bowed. So it's a very lyrical and expressive instrument. Now there's a lot of the long notes there, but you can do shorts. And all you have to do there is just prod your controller. And you get that short sound. The next play mode is pizzicato. So it sounds very pizzicato-ish. What I really like is you can see the hand appears on the cello and is playing the cello. And the last play mode is the collegno, which means striking with the back of the bow. So you can hear it there in different ranges. Now there are several different types of bow gesture. So expression is our standard one. And that sounds exactly like we'd expect our cello to sound. The other 2 are bipolar and bowing. And these are all to do with the different way the MIDI data is interpreted. Now these aren't really for the MPE controllers, they're for XY controllers, ribbons, expression pedals, etc. So these won't sound great. They just don't work. So for the MPE controller, we're going to stick with expression. Now underneath we have a sordino. I'll turn that off now. If we look at the attack, you can have soft velocity. And go through a variety of different attacks, says hard. Expression. And you can mix those up as well. Now, it's very much an instrument where your playing ability on whatever control surface you're using really is tested. Sometimes you may get exactly what you're looking for, sometimes you won't. And it is a case of practice, practice, practice. I could just say, though, that these feel very expressive out of the box and very, very, I suppose, different, very lyrical, and they flow incredibly well. They're just really nice lines. Now, next to the attack, you can set whether the portamento time is triggered by a CC or velocity. As I'm using an MPE controller, I'm going to keep it on velocity. You can add harmonics. So let's go for the first overtone. And you can see that overtone on the cello diagram as a red dot. So you have your green dot with the note you're playing, and the overtone is the red dot. Let's try the second overtone, should be higher. Very nice. You also have the option of tremolo. So there's a slow tremolo. And there's a fast tremolo as well. Over on the right, you have bow pressure. Now, the bow pressure will change how hard the bow is being used on the strings. So if you go all the way to the left, you can get an almost, well, it's not almost, it is a flautando effect. Ah, we're still on tremolo there. I'll turn that off. Here we go. If we go to the right, we have a scratchy effect. Now, the more pressure I add, the more scratchy it gets. Bit too much pressure there. So if we go about there, it should be a little more aggressive. And if we go more towards the softer side. Now we have the bow pizzicato position. This is quite cool. This is triggered by where on the key you strike. So if I'm playing, let's do this E. If I go further at the key, so in a vertical sense, you can hear the sound of the pizzicato change. It's very cool. And then you can change the pizzicato tone using this slider. And then there are a few other ways you can tweak the sound. So you can change the accent. Let's go back off pizzicato. And string resistance, it gets incredibly detailed, so you would have to spend a lot of time playing and tweaking these parameters. Now there could be very subtle changes, so my recommendation is once you get the instrument, have a play with that. So those are the main features of the instrument that you can tweak to create a bit more of an individual sound and fine tune your instrument. Now at the top, I've missed out a couple of other parameters. So the first thing you can do is tune the cello. You can fine tune it within a couple of cents, which is great. You can also add reverbs. So let's add a big reverb. So you get more of a cinematic sound. Now, if you like using your own reverbs, you can go completely dry. Okay, so you can match this instrument with the sound of the instruments you're using, and when you're building up your room, that's a really fantastic feature to have. Now, if I just very loosely drag it back to where it was, I will know it's at port 0.5. It'd be nice if I could double click on there and just set it back to as I would like it. And that was 18, wasn't it? So let's just drag. That's close enough. And then you can change the panning. So all the way to the left. All the way to the right. Also, we like that in the center. Can you change this center there? No. And you can transpose the instrument, and you can change the volume as well. So the instrument is very, very controllable, quite customizable. But how does it sound within a track? I say quite customizable. It does seem very customizable to me, actually. I will correct myself there. Yeah, so how does it sound in a track? Now, I have recorded a very simple, just piano-based chord progression, so I can play over in almost like a live performance situation. So let's see how that sounds. The idea of that small demo was just to see how the cello sounded in context. Now, using an MPE controller, you can sound slightly out of tune. It can translate as poor intonation or sound like you have old strings. So you have to be really accurate, especially on the C board when you're pressing the keys. So using the viola I've loaded up, you can hear how you can go slightly off key. So it does take a lot of practice. The other thing I didn't mention was if you don't like the sound of the specific instrument you're using, each instrument has different versions. So let's say I didn't like the viola I use. I could then change the timbre. So let's change that again. Excuse the mouse going everywhere then. So that's a lot warmer. So it gives you a lot more variation as well. All of the string instruments have this feature. So what I'm going to do is turn off the microphone and just play the remainder of the string instruments with different instrument types and some different articulations. So there's some examples of the solo string instruments. So some very, very quick thoughts. Now, they are really fun to play, very expressive, very lyrical, and you can get some fantastic sounds out of them. They aren't going to ever be as articulate as a sampled library. So by that I mean you can have gigabytes and gigabytes of samples with every single articulation under the sun sampled, and the SWAM engine doesn't allow for everything. So there are a lot of articulations missing, but for solo instruments that are very playable, very performance based, they do sound absolutely fantastic to me. So a lot of positivity. It's new technology, and I think what we've done with it so far, I think Audio Modelling have done something absolutely fantastic, and it's going to keep improving and getting better. So I'm already really, really impressed, and I think this is paving the way for things to come. Now, moving on to the winds, we're going to start with the alto flute and just a quick look at the GUI again. So you can see the top part is exactly the same as the strings. If I just play the flute. Okay, so this one takes a bit more controlling, but straight away I'm very impressed with the sound of the flute. Very, very authentic. We have the breath noise and the key noise over here, and obviously adjusting those, we can have a completely silent key. I'm sure there's a quick way of doing that. Yep, there is. And it would sound like this. Now, to me, that sounds a little less authentic, but it does sound like a very nice solo flute. Now, one thing I've noticed, if I am pushing really hard down on the controller and get the expression up, we start getting the overblown articulation. Okay. Now you can use this slider to change the style. So it's set to jazz. Now looking at the instruction manual, it sort of changes the attack and the, I suppose, the characteristics of how the flute is played. So you can go into a classical style. So that's very lyrical. I'm just going to bring the breath and the key noises back. I think that was on 60. Could be wrong. Let's get that really nice classical sound. Let's go to the other side and you get this ethnic sound. So it's more like a shakuhachi being played. So a bit more overblown. Let's hear it sounds. It's got that real attack going on. And then we have funk. And we have back to our starting jazz point. So again, you can really hear that attack. That sounds great. And we also have different instruments and different sounds as well. So you can change the timbres. So flute B. try a few more. Let's go warm. Let's go bright. Okay, and it's almost instinctive now, playing vibrato on virtually every note to get that expression through. It's just so expressive, sounds absolutely wonderful. Now you can see there is a growl going on. Now I can't control it using the keys. And this is one thing that's a bit of a limitation when using the keyboard, because I can add it on here, but I can't find a way to link the keyboard to creating the growl effect. Now if I play just a note again, you can hear that growl. So you can set it a small amount yourself and change it, but it'd be a nice thing to be able to control using the keyboard. Now there are obviously different ways you can control. You can do these very, very strange sounds, which isn't really going to help us. I can push, but I can't get a growl going there. I can't right click and change it. So it might be something you can change. Now, when we look at the brass, you can see that you can set those parameters. Maybe if I look in the options, we can see anything there. MIDI mapping. Okay, so you can use CC controllers. Now, one thing I don't have is another controller connected to this. I do have my keyboard, which is mapped in, so I could change the key switches on the keyboard and then use the Rolly to control what I'm doing. So there are plenty of different options. So actually, I could just find a learn here. So learn is on. Let's say I want to map it to, I'm going to map it to my mod wheel on the keyboard. Now I should be able to adjust the growl, and there we go. Fantastic. So I've learnt something as I'm doing the in-depth look at these instruments, which is great. So that works really, really well. Now you have all of these different parameters you can change. Go back to MIDI mapping. So we have growl. Let's do flutter. So I'm just going to quickly move that to, what should I move that to? CC14, and then let's do the flutter on the mod wheel again. Fantastic. There we go. So I can now do the flutter tongue. Also, you wouldn't want it on all the time. Okay, nice. Now let's go really over the top. I'm going to put the growl onto my expression keyboard, not keyboard, my expression pedal. And let's go back. So I should be able to control the growl, the flutter, and play. Okay, so I'm getting some fairly extreme sounds out of this lovely, delicate alto flute, which has now expanded the capabilities of it. We have more articulations, and yeah, you know, it sounds really good. Obviously, I'd have to control it, and I'm going to extremes so you can hear, you know, the variations, the full-on growl, the full-on flutter tongue. So if you have a MIDI controller, some sliders, faders, I do right in front of me. So yeah, that's a really cool thing to be able to do. So again, the instrument is becoming more versatile. So I have moved away from the alto flute and moved to the standard solo flute instrument, and I've turned all the reverb off at the top and added my own just to see how they react with outboard reverbs. Now, to continue with the GUI, we have different velocities, so we can have a hard attack, and you can really hear the breath sound. If we go soft, that's very cinematic with the, you know, pretty generous, I was going to say fairly generous, but it's quite big, the whole reverb going on. You've got that real big cinematic sound. And then if we go for expressive attack, so you can again feel the emotion, the lyricalness around the playing style there. I would argue now there's probably a bit too much reverb, but yeah. Okay. Also have a compressor, different release level. And the formant, which I believe will be a sort of frequency feel change. Some very cool things going on there. Just trying to get that sort of ethnic sound. So little flicks on the shorts. That sounds brilliant. And you know, again, it's the kind of thing you're going to play around with and have different tweaks. I mean, going into the options, you can adjust everything here. Then also you can map in real time. Yeah, you know, it's very, very impressive stuff. One thing I would really like, there's a lot of information here. Now, I have read through all of the instruction manuals, and it is a very, very deep instrument. You need to learn what everything does. You know, I'd imagine, I believe this is modal resistance. I don't quite know what that does at the moment. If I play, and then I do that. Now, I personally can't hear a massive difference there. I'm sure there is, and you know, it really enhances the tweakability. One thing I have noticed through reading through the instruction manuals is depending on the controller you're using, not all of these tweakable sliders and amounts affect the controller. It could be for the breath controller, it could be for the expression pedal, the mod wheel. So it really, is really worthwhile getting to know the instruments inside out. And like I say, I have been reading through them, but what I like doing is just getting in there and playing and tweaking and seeing what things do. So again, there's probably things I'm missing, but it does create a very diverse instrument. Now, I would argue you can get more articulations out of these woodwinds than you can the strings at the moment, but again, there could be something from the strings I'm missing. So yeah, these sound fantastic. So I'm going to switch the mic off and get rid of the reverb as well, and play through some different wind instrument sounds. So that's the more traditional woodwind instruments and the double reeds. Now I wanted to show the saxophones, which sound like this. So they, to me, sound lovely, fantastic, very expressive saxophones. With the big reverb, you get that instant cinematic sound. But one thing you can hear, especially doing fast runs, is almost like a... like the sound is breaking up a little bit. So the nice thing about these instruments is every time you're sort of finding something you don't quite like, see, that's not too pleasing for me. There's always going to be a way you can change it. So if I take the breath and the key gnaws down, so I can hear it's not that. Let's bring those up roughly to where they were. Let's change the release. Okay, so if I change the release of the sample, well, it's not the sample, the modelling, you can, yeah, eliminate that. Yeah, eliminate that sound. So I'll add the reverb back. So that's the baritone sax. Sounds very lyrical, expressive. These words I'm using a lot in this sort of deep look. But yeah, you know, it does sound great. I could use that definitely as a sax solo. In fact, it's one of the best saxophones I've heard. Absolutely love it. Now moving on to the soprano sax. So without any adjustment, that's how it sounds out of the box. Now, when I'm doing that kind of thing, again, that strange sound, it is to do with my playing as well. I'm not saying it's just the instrument. And this is why I keep emphasising the fact you have to really work at the instrument playing. I'm not entirely sure what happened there. So clearly I'm doing something wrong. It's just a case of getting smoother on the controller. But it's worth noting, if you do pick up these instruments and you have effects like that going on, it is good to know that the more you persevere, the less those issues will occur, I suppose. So again, I could change the release. Sound absolutely brilliant. And here we have the tenor sax. Okay, so remember you can set the growl and flutter tongue to be used with your other MIDI controllers. To bring in those really expressive effects and different articulations. So that was the tenor sax. Finally, we have the alto sax. The last section of the SWAM all-in bundle is the 15 instrument brass section. Now, as you can see, the GUI is completely different. Let's see what it sounds like. Okay, so in terms of the timbres, it does sound great. This straight out the box, that is not what I want. But it's okay because it's a SWAM instrument, so there's going to be a way to fix that and change that. Now, this is what's happening on the C board. Doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen on whatever you're using. And if you are using a C board, well, it can be changed. So you can change the controller up the top, and I am set to default C board, and there is, yeah, all the controls are there that we need. So that's not going to stop it. So let's go to the advanced tab, and we're looking for the portamento. Now there you can see it's 2.4 seconds. So no matter how hard I hit the keys, I get that portamento time. So I'm going to turn that off, and there we go, no portamento. So once again, the tweakability of these instruments really comes into its own. Yeah, straight out the box, they're not going to work exactly like you want them to. They're going to be pretty close. That's quite a big issue to see. Let's just change it to MPE. I think because I've set the controller as MPE, it's sort of overriding that effect anyway. But yeah, so all this you can change. You can change the pitching, micro tuning, different timbres. This is where your breath noise, resonance, etc. is there. Different play modes. You change between slide and vowels, which is very cool. I think you could do that on the front page as well. And okay, you could even adjust the individual vowels. That's very cool. So, yeah, so you change the vowels. Now the growl, is it the growl? It's the flutter. The flutter's already mapped by sliding a finger down the key, so that's very cool. So that's one less thing you need to map. Now, if you want to combine that with some growl, you're going to need to assign the CC for that. But that level expression, whoops, that's made my desk move, is very fun. Very good, very cool. Lots of words which are all very positive because it is a great feature to have. So the aim is to create these very playable, expressive instruments, and this is exactly what audio modelling have done. They are just completely expressive and playable. So can't wait to see what they come out with in the future, but this is brilliant. So just a quick recap, the strings, lovely, expressive, sound great. Some of the best solo strings I've used, bit limited in terms of articulations, but they sound brill. The woodwinds, again, fantastic. The flutes especially, very, very lyrical. Do need tweaking, but yeah, sound great. But the brass is, at the moment, with the saxophones, seem, yeah. Trying to find the right word to describe it. In a different league at the moment. That's how I'm feeling about them. Yeah, so let's keep going. Moving on to the tuba. It sounds like this. That's the bass tuba. I've adjusted the portamento, but you still have that big slide, so I'm going to turn that off completely. That sounds good. Now, with all the brass instruments, you can have a different variety of mutes. Can do that. Give out some flutter. Let's have a harmoire mute. Okay, so when I'm using excessive vibrato there, it does sound a little bit odd sometimes. But again, it's a SWAM instrument, so you can change and adjust and tweak to your heart's content until you get exactly the sound you want. Don't think we did the cup one mute. And then we can change to the slide. Which sounds a bit more open to me, a bit brighter. Okay, so that's the bass tuba. Now down here, seems to be, let's go drop the octave. Okay, so it's a, I thought they could have been key switches, but it's the really low playable range. The other thing that's interesting as well is going on in the middle. Depending on what I play, the articulation changes. So if I go back to no mute, so staccato, semi-staccato, and then legato. Now there's a few, they sounded a bit almost like dead notes. Now that was me on the controller. There you go. So again, it's a playing style, playing preference. Have to make sure that you're cleanly changing the notes. But again, like the saxophones and the other wood instruments, I'm sure there's a parameter you can change. So that's the bass tuba. And now we're on the double bass tuba, exactly the same controls. So I've loaded it up with the portamento still on. Now this is something that it'd be quite nice if it was set to default as an off. There might be a way of doing that. And I did add some big reverb. Just see what the cinematic vibe is like without it. Gets a really nice low end there. And again, you have the different variety of mutes. One of those with a nice helping of reverb. Now the brass seems more responsive, so if you do get something not quite right on your control surface, you can hear about it. And just gently pushing in the keys, that expression is so smooth, and you can see the pitch bend slightly going, which obviously is the vibrato. The flutter tongue is on there again. If I just turn the growl up, it's quite a severe growl. Let's go down a bit. Bit of flutter. That sounds good. So that is sort of more of the low end. So the double bass trombone. Let's move on. Now looking at the euphonium, we've covered most of the features already. Looking at the other instruments, the euphonium sounds like this. So let's go into the different timbres. So let's change the bell resonance. More breathing noise. You can really hear that breathing noise behind. So maybe, yeah, if you turn the breath noise down, you get a really clean sound. Let's bring the bell down. Dirtiness. That's good. Mute size. That would be if I have the mute on. So we'll set a mute on. Dynamic sensitivity. Let's go to a mute. That's the thing when you're playing these instruments, you are rattling your desk. Well, I am. So I just managed to rattle my mouse off its mouse mat. Hence a little knock. So if I put a mute on, seem a bit quiet. Let's bring the track up a bit. So if we go back to there. So you can completely change the sound of the mute as well. So that's, again, makes the instrument very more customizable. So that is the euphonium. The range of these instruments is fantastic as well. They just sound great to either extreme or just in the middle. So, yep, very impressive. And now we're on the flugelhorn. So that's completely out of the box. I'm going to take the breath noise down and the portamento again. So that sounds... Sounds very smooth. I do like the representation up here of what your signal looks like. Smooth. And quite choppy. Yep, sounds good. So, yep, flugelhorn. Very cool. Now there are two French horns, and there's two flugelhorns. The one French horn is in F, one French horn is in B flat. French horns sound like this. So right out the box, that sounds wonderful. It has that really nice level of sort of brassiness, like it's just on the edge as it opens up. So you got to ask yourself, would that work well in a orchestral setting or as a lead instrument? So yeah, I mean, I could imagine solos. Being played sort of alongside an orchestra. Gone back to the big reverb to make that big cinematic sound. It just sounds so just so wonderful, really. I was going to use the word sonorous or sonorous. Just sounds wonderful. So that is the French horn, or one of the French horns. Here we have the piccolo trumpet. So, like I say, with a breath controller or a different type of 5D controller, or using your keyboard, traditional MIDI controller, I imagine it wouldn't load up with that portamento. But it's easy to change. So that's the piccolo trumpet. The complete instrument list for the brasses are alto trombone, bass trombone, double bass trombone, tenor trombones, bass tuba, tuba in E flat, euphonium, flugelhorns 1 and 2, French horns 1 and 2, piccolo trumpet, and finally it leaves us with two trumpets. We have trumpet and the trumpet in C. Now the regular trumpet sounds like this. So straight out the box sounds, it sounds absolutely lovely for a solo instrument. I could imagine this doing some brilliant solos with an orchestra or a small ensemble. And I did turn the portamento off. So one thing I've noticed, if you're just going between some notes that are very close, it's a very nice effect. Okay, so getting my legato out a little bit there. It's when you're doing big octave jumps. It's like I have my old Digitech whammy pedal. Going on there, and it's doing some quite extreme stuff. But this could just be down to the controller I'm using. Now, the only MPE controller I have is a C-board. So on the normal Midi keyboard, it could sound completely different. If using a breath controller, I've seen some great videos of people getting those really high extreme notes on the brass using a breath controller. Now, I can't do that with the Rolly. If you go into the controller settings, you can actually see the CCs that aren't being used. So growl, breath noise, dirtiness. So these articulations aren't in. I mean, you can adjust the portamento time. So, you know, that'd make a lot more sense. Panic. I'm not entirely sure what panic is. That's one for the instruction book. But you can see all these different parameters you can change, different articulations you can change. You can, you know, create these far more expressive instruments than I'm showing on the C-board at the moment. But that said, you know, with what I'm doing, you know, I'm very, very pleased. I could use these all day long. And then if I do take that off, now there are 32 instruments there, and I'm really, really impressed with the technology, the playability, the level of tweakability and customization of each instrument. And I think it's vital that you can do that, because depending on the controller you're using, if you're using a breath controller or your MIDI keyboard or a C-board like I was, it's amazing that they've catered for everyone. Now, the expressiveness on the C-board has been absolutely second to none. It's, you know, it makes music possible in a way it's not been possible before, let's put it that way. And you can have, you know, so high level, meticulously sampled instruments, but having an instrument with virtually no footprint, no sample pool. You know, what's grabbed me, the brass. Now, the brass out the box you've had to tweak, and once it's tweaked, which takes all of 10 seconds, it sounds fantastic as well. So I just love the timbres, the sound, and the technology behind it is, you know, breathtaking. The woodwinds, again, the flute instantly blew me away. Just so lyrical, so playable, and it sounds so human. In fact, that's the key thing about this bundle. All the instruments sound human. Now, there are some flaws. The instruments are naturally going to be missing all the articulations you could possibly ever want. But as I've said, it's early technology. Audio modelling, I'm sure they listen to what everyone's saying. They're constantly expanding their expertise in this field. And what they've done so far is, you know, nothing short of amazing. So taking this technology further, I can't wait to see how they develop. And I can imagine more articulations and ways around making these instruments more expensive. Already, I can't wait to use these in production. I do think they're going to sound fantastic. I can't wait to see for the future. I'd love to try them using different controllers just to see exactly how they work, what different sounds I can get. Like I said, I've seen some videos where using different controllers, people are getting some absolutely crazy, realistic, epic moments with these instruments. So they're worth checking out. But, you know, using a C-board and playing through these has been an absolute pleasure. So final thoughts. Well, who are these instruments for? anyone who wants to compose in a completely different original way. One thing I will say, you have to have good ability on the controller you're using. Now, when I started making music, going back a few years now, one thing was really useful. If I bought a great sample library, it would suddenly make me sound a lot better. That's not the case with these instruments. If you are good at using your MPE, then you're going to make these instruments shine and sound fantastic. If you're not, and your ability is lacking, you could end up with strange stuff. Now, I have to admit, when I first got my keyboard, that's exactly how I sounded. So it is a learning curve, and it takes time, and it's not like, you know, a fussy thing or an arrogant thing. You just have to have basic control over what you're playing. I did try drawing in some Midi, and it sounded very good, but it was very, very mechanical because you're not controlling all the parameters you want to. And that's not what the instruments are designed for. They're designed to be played. So these instruments, you know, they're designed for people who can play, live performers. Obviously, if you're writing music or orchestrating it at home, you can play it in. That's exactly what you need to be able to do. You can quantize afterwards, and it will sort all the MIDI data out and set delays and put effects on and all the usual, but you need to be able to play these in. Now, these will be used in film, TV, video games. If you're writing for your friend's wedding, they sound absolutely great. You can use these in any situation. You'd find yourself using brass, wind or string instruments. Thank you so much for checking out my audio modelling SWAM all-in bundle deeper look. Please leave a like if you like what you saw or heard, and leave a comment and let me know if you'd use this in your workflow. What do you think about the instruments, and how do you think audio modelling can improve on such great technology? Please subscribe to the channel and jump over to samplelibraryreview.com to check out everything to do with sample libraries and the world of music creation. Have a great day, and thanks for watching.